Hidden beneath the vast green jungles of Coba are the remains and treasures of an ancient Maya civilization. Coba is a Mayan term meaning water stirred by wind, and this magnificent city is surrounded by 5 fresh water lakes and many cenotes. Cenote is a term for natural water well. The initial goal of this expedition was to research and document artifacts from this Mayan culture. As the explorers ventured through the jungles, the intent of the expedition took an exciting focal turn, and the importance of the cenote became evident. The temple at Noakmul towers above the jungle and is surrounded by many Mayan pathways. The Maya call these pathways Sakbi, and they lead outward to various surrounding cities. These Sakbis are indicative of Coba's importance, as they have the distinction of being the longest paths known to this culture. As the explorer steps into the temple, his mind steps back into the recesses of time and searches for the secrets entombed by the ancient Maya cenotes. Deep within this ancient water well is evidence that man existed long before the Maya or the Olmec. The intent of these underwater videographers was to search, recover, and identify artifacts from this lost culture.
George, can you tell Billy and myself what we're going to expect today when we enter the cave and how this is going to relate to us when we enter the cenote?
Yeah, you know, as you all know, the cenote is just a water-filled cave, so there'll be a lot of similarities between the cenote and what we're going to see here. For instance, there'll be breakdown blocks probably, like what we're sitting on. There'll probably be stalagmites, stalactites, you know, like the stuff we see behind us here in this entrance room. So there'll be some similarities like that, I'd expect. Some things that I wouldn't expect, though, at least compared to a normal dive, some things you'll find that are going to be different, is you're going to have a lot of algae probably in the water of the entrance area when you go into the cenote. But once you get inside and away from sunlight where the algae can't grow, you should have crystal clear visibility, assuming that there's no problems with silt and so forth in the cave. The other thing, because the cenote is so close to the sea, we may have some seawater entering into the cenote, and you know we'll have to cross what you call the halocline, going from the fresh water into the salt water. It just depends how far we're able to go into the cenote and to what depth we reach.
George, can you explain how cenotes are formed?
Yeah, cenotes are formed pretty much like any other cave, where you've got water dissolving away the limestone rock. And after a while, the water will drain out of the cave. In the case with the cenote and other caves in the Yucatan area, the water drains out due to the sea level dropping. And when the water drains out, it allows stalactites and stalagmites to drip and form. It allows for some breakdown to occur. And then at a later time, sea level again rises and refloods the cave. So in order to explore it, to check it out, you know, you have to put on scuba. Unlike this cave, where sea level is not near the level of this cave, you know, we don't need scuba, and so we can go check it out right now.
The journey to the actual dive site will take approximately 2 hours. In this 2 hours, they will travel some 60 miles over one of the better roads in this area. The time passes quickly as the men are finally able to grasp the reality of the long-anticipated dreams. Upon arrival, the divers are greeted by the tranquil blue surface water of the cenote. The serene surface water is merely a facade for the adventures submerged below. The divers assemble at the opening of the cenote. They come prepared with the dive gear and the camera equipment necessary to make this a successful operation. Safety is the foremost factor in this venture, and each man carefully inspects his equipment. A standard dive safety procedure is to have the dive partners check each other's equipment. this situation, the dive coordinator will individually check each man's gear and give the okay for the divers to enter the water.
One of the gauges on here. Yeah, have that get out of it. Good.
There you go, and put your arm through the octopus hose. That's how it's done. There you go. Good, now get that out of the way.
Everybody ready? Yeah. Ready.
As the divers enter the fresh water of the cenote, they leave behind the safety of the surface and venture into the silence and mystery of an ancient world lost to time. A dense green layer of algae meets the divers as they begin their initial descent. Passing through this thick algae bloom, the divers enter the still crystalline waters of the cenote, leaving the halo of the green algae above. Each diver must become neutrally buoyant without disturbing the bottom of the cenote. Tiny freshwater fish are abundant. They greet the divers with open curiosity as they pass over a tropical garden carpet of green plants leading to the mouth of the cave. The entrance of the cave is shrouded by trees fallen from the past, and the divers must exercise caution in their maneuvers through the grasping limbs. Just inside the cave, the green ambient light from above fades into complete darkness, and from this point forward, there can be no margin of error in the diver's competence and judgment. They only have 25 minutes, or the equivalent of 1/4 of their total air supply, in which to complete the dive and allow sufficient air and time to return to the surface. The dive guide gives the OK sign, indicating to the divers that the lifeline tie-off is complete. They can now begin the formal descent into the inner space of the cave corridor. The divers will reel out the line as they descend, and this line will allow them to return to the surface without deviation from their course. They will follow a path encircling many magnificent stalactites and stalagmites. They will also notice a significant amount of breakdown. Breakdown is a term used by cave enthusiasts to explain the large rocks or boulders on the cave floor. These formations are evidence that this cave has been dry and then flooded several times. The collapse begins as the water recedes, leaving tremendous amounts of weight on the cave ceiling. Since there are no supporting structures below, the heaviest structures on the ceiling will fall, forming the breakdown or collapse. Emerging from the first room, the divers have an opportunity to view the first corridor in its entirety, and they are amazed at its actual size. As they progress, they are going deeper into the cavern system and will travel approximately 250 feet back in order to get to the Chamber of Horrors. The pillars seen along the way were formed when the stalactites on the ceiling and the stalagmites on the floor actually grew together. These formations are seen throughout the entire cavern system, and their size is helpful in understanding the actual age of this cavern. During the pre-dive discussions, it was noted that the name Chamber of Horrors was established by previous explorers, and as the divers entered this room, they began to understand why this name was chosen. A mysterious, formidable feeling is present as the divers glide past massive structures. and it seems as if they are being watched from above. As the mind wonders and searches for information, a large, almost godlike face is visualized in the limestone. It seems to stand guard against any intruders from the modern-day world. Is this bewildering, inexplicable presence a natural phenomenon? Or was it actually carved by ancient man to serve as a frightening illusion, warning all who venture into this secluded universe? The divers continue their trek under the watchful eyes of the visionary entity. Rising and reaching for the cavern ceiling is what appears to be smoke coming from the floor below. This smoky apparition is caused by one of the divers who has ventured underneath an umbrella-shaped ledge. The combination of air bubbles and silt rising through the porous limestone of the collapse is the actual cause of the visual effect. This area is believed to have been a campsite for Neolithic man. In their search, the divers uncovered a hollow bone believed to be the bone of a small bird. Was this bird brought here by a predatory animal? Or is it the remains of a meal enjoyed by a ravenous hunter seeking shelter from the elements? Have now spent approximately 25 minutes in the cave, and their air supply is at a level of mandatory surfacing. The lead diver begins a slow ascent out of the cavern, and the lifeline acts as an anchor between ancient and modern-day man. The emergence carries the men from encompassing darkness to the warm, beckoning light of day.
From what we've seen on this first dive and from what we know of the geology of the area, it's safe to say that the cave probably began to form about 500,000 years ago. During that time, rainwater began to soak into the ground along fractures. The limestone, being a very soluble rock, was readily dissolved by the water to develop channels along those fractures. These channels interconnected and grew larger to form a water-filled cave. The cave was an underground stream, whose water reappeared at the surface as a spring near or perhaps below the nearby seacoast. About 180,000 years ago, sea level began to drop, and the water drained out of the cave. I know the date of the sea level drop because stalactites and stalagmites form by dripping water, and that can only happen when the cave is air-filled. Radiometric dating has placed these formations at about 174,000 years old. Also during this time, without the water's buoyant support of the ceiling, some of the cave's larger rooms began to collapse. One of these collapses or breakdowns went high enough to reach the surface. In doing so, it formed the cave's entrance. Following the collapse, sea level rose, and the cave was again filled with water. This cycle has repeated itself at least 2 times.
The new day dawns bright and clear. The anticipation on the part of the divers is magnified as they check their gear and prepare for the most important dive of the expedition. This dive has been carefully planned and mapped out. It is the apex of the expedition. The divers hope to gather significant artifacts from an ancient fire pit known to be deep within the recesses of the southernmost portion of the cavern system.
Depth gauge zeroed out. Zero.
As the last two divers begin their descent, the murky green blanket of algae rises up to cloud the clear blue waters of the cenote. As instructed by the safety coordinator, the divers demonstrate an anti-silting propulsion, a special kick used in cave diving so as not to stir up the silt on the floor below. Is initially secured to a tree limb approximately 20 feet below the water's edge, and again secured at approximately 30 feet. The second tie-off is important in that it will allow the divers a good angle of entry into the cave. The initial restriction or entryway is small, and the divers will have to progress in a single file. In order to enter the room below, they will have to maneuver around large pieces of breakdown, being careful not to disturb the silt on the floor below. Diving dictates that a diver must progress at 50 feet per minute. At this rate, it'll take approximately 3 minutes to reach the white room. This room of the cave is cup-shaped, allowing light to bounce off walls and ceiling, illuminating the entire room. The effect is an eerie white glow. The third and final tie-off will be made as they leave the white room and start toward the second restriction. After the tie-off is complete, the divers start through the second restriction, an oily, hazy area called a halocline. Is where the fresh and salt water collides, thus giving the water an oily appearance and causing the divers to reestablish neutral buoyancy. It is interesting to note that the fish who have accompanied the divers to this point will not venture through the halocline. It seems as if there is an invisible barrier entrapping all marine life and preventing their entry into the salty world below. These explorers were overwhelmed to be witnessing sights that until now were only seen through the eyes of ancient man. As the divers emerge from the halocline, they will have plunged to a depth of approximately 80 feet and travel 400 feet back into the inner sanctum of the cave. The men seem to glide peacefully above the cavern floor, mindful of the purpose for this search. The beams from the dive lights scour the remains of the breakdown and come to rest on a cavity of a large pyramid-shaped piece of collapse. Nestled inside this cavity is the reward for the trek. Artifacts have dated back over 5,000 years, thus placing this primitive culture's existence in the last ice age. Startling evidence of ancient man rests peacefully in the hollows of the collapse. Suspicion and apprehension are great as a sample of charcoal is collected. Unanswered questions flood the mind and pour into the imagination. Why was this fire pit made? And what tools were used to carve the actual pool in the bottom of the limestone? Was this fire pit used for warmth and shelter? Or was it used to prepare a long-awaited meal? Why was this location chosen for a structure such as a fire pit? Careful observation allows us to see that particles of charcoal are scattered about the cavern floor. Obviously, the most important question to be posed is, who were these ancient people that traveled so far back into a cave to build a fire? Is it possible that this fire pit was built for a religious ceremony by an ancient civilization of God-fearing men? Or was it used for a ceremony to praise spirits gone before them? Or were they merely looking for the essential fluid of life, water? As the lifeline is retracted and the divers start their journey back into the modern world, they take one last look at the cavern that now fills the mind with magnitudes of unanswered questions. It is easy to view this underwater civilization as a celebration of life in its purest sense. The actual identification and revelation surrounding the secrets of this ancient Maya cenote may never be fully understood. But this exploration has allowed the divers to become a temporary participant in the celebration. They will return to the surface with actual evidence of ancient man. It is hoped that these artifacts can be used in the identification process incorporated to understand the profound significance of this area of the world. In August 1987, the sea impressed Depression team made 21 penetration dives into the Cenote's cavern system. Bone samples and charcoal were recovered in various areas, along with other artifacts. These items have now raised many new and mysterious questions. The answer remains somewhere in the deep, dark recesses of the Cenote. Will some new explorer find the answer? Or will the secret stay buried with the past? Perhaps modern man will never know the true secrets of the ancient Maya cenote.
Hey, Jim, you do okay? I told you you would. He hadn't said that. He didn't say I did okay. Let's put it this way. He made it. All right. Billy, here's another one. You got one light on, or is that just a reflection? Light off. It's like it stays light, but it wouldn't down. You got the basic on? Green.
Based on the results of the dives, we can make several conclusions about the cenote. First of all, with the geology, the rises and falls of sea levels have been well documented now with the dating of the stalactite. But very surprising, something we didn't expect, was the fire pit. And the fire pit gives us some information on the archaeological prehistory of this area, and it's given us some insights into what went on back then. The cave's most recent air-filled period ended about 6,000 to 7,000 years ago. Carbon-14 dating of the charcoal in the fire pit indicates that the people of that area went into the cave to that level. It's quite likely that the water level in the cave was just below the fire pit, and they entered in search of drinking water. Change with sea levels. The topmost layer of water is fresh water, which flows down from the inland areas. Any salt water from below, from the sea would be below the halicline at some depth. Certainly the cave was very important to these ancient people. The Yucatan Peninsula has virtually no surface water in it. And all fresh water at that time was accessible only through springs and through caves. 5,000 years later, after these people left, when the Yucatan was settled by the Maya put great religious significance and importance to these caves as sources of life-giving water. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the caves were held in similar high esteem by the Maya's predecessors.
You leave this set for about 3-4 hours. You'll see the charcoal here that we just collected will all settle down. There's some big stuff in here, and the little stuff is just floating around beneath the dam. Probably got enough here for half a cat, 3/4 of a catful.
You got enough for a dating then?
That'd be fun. That'd be real fun.
Well, good. I appreciate it, Jim.
You're welcome.
And thank you.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Come back and do it again.
Okay. Great dive. Just a great dive. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.